Hey guys, welcome to another Bitter Butter Render Blender tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to create these cute looking doodle animations, and I'll be showing you how to put them onto real life elements such as this candle video over here. So first, what we're going to be doing is opening up a new Vfx Motion Tracking tab. And over here, we're going to open up a video which I'll put in the description below. Just download that video and you'll be fine. Okay, with that video selected, now you want to find out the subject, or in other words, the object that you're going to be putting your cute doodle face on. And in this case, it's going to be this candle. And then on your subject, or the candle, you're going to find a point to track. And that point shouldn't be kind of hidden, but it should stand out, such as this candle wick over here. So to add one, you click Control, click. Make sure in frame 1, not somewhere else, because then it will make the process to track longer. Okay, with that selected, now you're going to want to click Set Scene Frames and Prefetch to get a smoother playback. And once the prefetching is done, you can go ahead, choose Normalize and uncheck Prepass and click Ctrl-T to track. After a while, in this case, it will stop tracking, and that's when the candle blows out and the flame covers the candle wick. But that's okay, because when the candle is blowing out, the character will die and we won't be needing to animate it or tracking it. So after that's done, now we need to first set the resolution and match the Blender's camera's resolution to the resolution of our video. In this case, it's 1080 by 1920. And there we go. So what we want to do is delete all the lights, because we don't want to add any realism to it, but instead we want this really cartoonish, goofy look. So just delete everything there is and click Reconstruction and link empty to track. And now what that does is it creates an empty in our space that follows the tracked area. But we can't see the video for now, and we can fix that by clicking Solve and Set as Background. And that just puts the video as the background in our camera. So if we're just going into the camera view right now, you can see that the empty now follows the candle wick. Just like that. And that empty is really useful when we create our face and pair the motion of the face to the empty. So let's just do that real quick. Shift A, images as planes. Now if you don't see images as planes, it's an add-on which helps you a lot in many cases. So you can enable that in the edit section, preferences, the add-ons, and just search up images as planes and check that. Once that's checked, you will have the images as planes option just over here in the images tab. And with that, what you want to do is open up this image texture, or a image sequence, which I'll put in the description below. So let me just open up that real quickly. And with this, what you want to do is not open up everything there is. Firstly, just open up any of them. I like going with face 1, because if we choose all of them, it creates an array of images, but instead we want to have all the images in one plane and have the ability to kind of swap through them. Okay, so what we want to do now is just kind of move the plane to the empty to get kind of like a starting point, and we can do that by choosing the empty, moving the cursor or a spawn point to the selected object, the empty. Click the plane, Shift S, selection to cursor, making the empty go to the spawn point, which is the cursor. So we can go into the texture view to get a better view on how the images as planes will look. So I feel like we can rotate this. And by the way, if you want to copy my settings, they're over here, the location, rotation, and scale, and all that, and you can just copy that off right in here. So let's just kind of scale this up. That looks fine. It looks awesome. Okay, so now the issue is that if we just play through, you can see that the candle or the face doesn't match with each other in the motion. So just go into frame 1 and click on the images as planes, shift click on the empty, Control P, and object keep transform, and that just pairs the images as planes, or the face's motion or the empty's motion with the face's motion. So now the face kind of follows the candle around until it gets blown off, and that makes sense because we didn't track the part. Okay, now what we want to do is first of all change the shading of that, because right now it is using a principal Bsdf to drive the shading, and that is an issue because it creates realism, meaning it creates glossiness, shadows, specular tints, reflections, and all that stuff. So here's the thing. we want it to emit light. That's the only way we can make it so that there's no shading or anything like that. And we can do that by first adding a emission shader. And that's what we need to do to make it emit light. But there's another issue with that. We don't have the alpha values, or in other words, the transparent background. And that's an issue because right now, Blender doesn't know which parts should be transparent, so it just makes the whole thing black and emit light. So first of all, we can do that by first adding a transparent Bsdf over here. And we need to drive that, and we need to put the emission shader and the transparent Bsdf together using a mix shader, not the mix RGB, mix shader. And you can plug in the transparent Bsdf on top. But still, Blender still doesn't know which parts to make transparent and which part should be emitting light. And you can easily fix that by putting the alpha value into the factor input. And there we go. So we've got the face emitting light. Well, it's black, so it can't really emit light, but it makes it so that other lights don't interact with it. Okay, with that selected, now what we want to do is animate the faces. But the issue is that this is a single image, and we want to be able to kind of switch through images. So first, what we can do is change this single image to a image sequence, and then over here you can open up these things. And now remember, with the settings over here, make sure your frames is 1, start frame 1, and the offset 0, because sometimes it might be the amount of frames might be 25, and that messes it up. Okay, so with the faces selected, just choose face 1, shift and click face 25, and that should open up all the faces. Now you might not be able to see anything, and like I said, if your frames goes back to frame 25, make sure it's 1. Okay, so the thing is that we won't be able to see anything that's happening right now, but with the offset, the value of the offset changes the face expression, and that's what we're going to use to animate it. So let's just go to offset 0 right now, and we're going to use this guide and face guide, which will be in the description with the other face expression images. And this guide will help us choose which face by correlating it with a certain number. So for example, if I want, let's say, this crying face, I go with the number 8. But the thing is, I don't go with the number 8. Instead, I subtract 1 and put it as the offset. And there's a reason for that. As you can see, the face guide starts off with the number 1. But in Blender, the offset starts off with 0. So that means that with the face guide, we need to subtract 1 to get the actual value. So right now, in this whole scene that we're creating, we want it to be really happy. So for example, 14, subtract 1 because of the offset value, and make it 13. So we can go with the offset of 13. And that just makes it so it looks happy. And over here, let's just open up a new tab. So we can just drag out by this corner. It's a little annoying, but we can open up the shader editor, and that's where we'll be animating. And let's just bring up the timeline so we know what we're doing. So right now we want the offset to be 13, so we can click I. And then maybe a few frames forward, when it's getting blown out, it can be sad or scared. So in that case, it would be 19, subtract 1, 18. So we choose the offset of 18. And then then we animate it by clicking I. And then once it's fully dead, so somewhere around there, we go with the dead face, and that would be 20 subtracted 1. That's 19. So over here, we just make the offset 19. And click I to set a keyframe. Now the issue is that even if we play through, we've gotten our animation, but you can see how it's just switching through all the animations or face expressions between the face expressions that we animated. And to fix that, we need to change the interpolation mode. So click A, T, and make sure it's constant. So it's constant between each frames and not cycling through. And we can see that it does that. So after that, we've gotten the basic shape. Now, this is a quick example of what I did, but if you want to be more creative and do other face expressions, you can. It's all up to you. So let me just close this up real quickly. Join areas. There we go. Bring the timeline down. We want to create the arms. The arms is actually pretty easy to make. Let's first set the origin point to the cursor, or to the images as planes. So we can do that. And let's add a plane. With this plane selected, now let's just add a subdivision surface modifier so it makes it a little smoother, but the thing is it makes it too round. If we change the value to 3, you can see that it's really roundish. It's too smooth. We can fix that by first of all scaling it on the y-axis and adding edge loops by clicking Ctrl R and bringing it on. So for this side, give a big gap, not too much of a big gap, but enough. And Ctrl R for the other side and make it pretty tiny. Okay, with that selected, now going into edge select mode, we'll start creating the fingers, or the 3 fingers that this has. We can first extrude this side on the y-axis, so somewhere on there, and extrude the other side on the y-axis as well. And with that selected, we can extrude the front edge on the x-axis, somewhere on there, scale it at a loop cut, bring it down, and maybe scale that as well. And that creates this arm. Now, if it's a little fat like it is for me, you can always kind of mess around with the scale. And like I said, these are the location, scale, and the rotation values that I have. So now what we want to do is copy the face's rotation and those values with the hand. And we can do that by simply looking at this rotation, which is 90 and 46.1, 90, 46.1. Okay, now with the y value, it does have a change. You know, the hand has a 0, but the face has a amount of rotation. The thing is, it's way too tiny, so we can obviously just make this 0. And it'll be the same rotation. So the thing is, what we need to do is move this in a way. So G, X, X, and that just moves it on its local x-axis, and scale it down. Now the issue is that the origin point is in the middle. So if we were to rotate it, let's say on the y-axis, the local z-axis, you can see that it's rotating on its middle. And we don't want that. Instead, we want to rotate it over here at the end. So we can do that by clicking Tab to go into edit mode, A, G, X, X, and make sure the origin point, the tiny dot, is at the end. And then we can move it back in object mode to where it's supposed to be. So somewhere around there. Okay, with that, now we can actually scale it down without losing its space. And now for the texturing, the shading is actually pretty simple. It's just a emissive surface that emits, well, blackness. It's not light, because I'm pretty sure black lights don't exist in Blender. And there we go. We can now duplicate it and move it by clicking Shift D, XX, and rotating it on the Z-axis by 180. Just make sure that it's in line. So it is, but going into layout mode, we can see that it's not fully moved on the x-axis. So GXX and make sure it's there. Okay, now with this, we can animate it by hand, but it's gonna take a while, especially since it's a lot of frames. Actually, let's actually stop it once it dies until maybe around frame 80, because the extra frames aren't that important. So around frame 80, of course, if you want to keep going with more frames, you can. The only issue is that we haven't tracked the other faces, so the face will stay still while the candle is moving, and it'll look a little awkward. Okay, with the hand, now what we want to do is first actually pair the motion to the empty. So holding down the arm, you can click Shift, Control P, Object Key Transform. Do the same with the other arm. Shift, Control P, Object Key Transform. And with that, now we can start animating. First, let's just add a location, or well, not a location, a rotation keyframe on one arm. And at the end, add another rotation keyframe. Now, you don't have to animate anything. It's just there so we can add the noise modifier to keyframes. So over here, going into the graph editor, you can go into the object transforms with the hand selected and choose the, let's see, RY. The RZZ. Nah, just a sec. the local z-axis. Now we can't choose the local z-axis, so we have to find the one that's similar. So I feel like I feel like the z-axis would be fine, not the local one, the global z-axis. So what we want to do is first over here, make sure z Euler rotation, I think that's how it's pronounced, is set. Click N to open up the hidden menu, modifiers, add modifier, and click noise. And the noise modifier is really helpful when you're trying to create camera shake in really shaky scenes. So with that, you'll be able to see that there's not much going on here until you just move up, and that's when there is. Now I feel like this is too much. If you play it around, you can see that it's like going crazy, and that's not how it's supposed to be. It looks a little creepy. So what we can do is actually mess around with the scale. So the scale is actually a little too compact. So around 3.6, strength, maybe kind of tweak it down a little. Just play that back. Still looks a little fast, so maybe change the scale a little. So somewhere around there. And that looks pretty good. The only issue is that once it dies, it still keeps moving. So somewhere around there, it keeps moving. So what we want to do is go into frame 57 and make sure it stops there. So you can click restrict frame range and scroll down or click on this button and make the end frame 57. And that just limits it to frame 57. So you can see that it moves around, and at frame 7 it kind of dies off. Now we can do the same one over here. Let's maybe copy the same settings. So add a keyframe with the rotation over here, and at the last frame 80 you can add another rotation keyframe. So click on the green menu, choose the Z Euler rotation. Complicated, weird, but yeah, and add the noise modifier. And now we can't see anything for some reason, but that's probably because we're on the x-axis. And just click on the z-axis to make sure, and scroll down until you find it. Okay, now we just need to copy the same settings. So go back here. Seems that we have a scale of 4.7. We have a strength of 0.3. And the restricted frame range is normally, I think it was 57. It should be, just make sure it is 57. So now if we play that back, you can see that it is moving around. And once it dies, it stops. And that's all we really need to do. Make sure the render engine is Eevee, because cycles and Eevee, it doesn't really make too much of, well, it doesn't make any difference. Just it takes longer to render on cycles, especially because it's just emitting light and there's nothing to it, like reflections and all that. So first, just make sure you have a frame rate of 24 FPS, like how I did it. Choose the output on where you want to save it. Make sure the file format is FFmpeg. You could export it as an image sequence, but since this is a very simple scene, there's no point in making it an image sequence and then adding it back, because you're not going to really lose anything. And with the encoding, make sure the best option I go with usually is MP4 or MPEG-4, and these settings, don't worry about it too much. And the other thing is with the compositing over here, what we want to do is use nodes, and you can see that we got the render layers, but we need a alpha over node, and we're gonna have to set the, what do you say, not that one. We need to set the video of our original video behind the thing that we just created, the face expressions and all that. So we can open up another node called the movie clip node, and we're gonna open up the movie or the image, and it will be already there since we've opened it up in the motion tracking tab. So click that, and that should be fine. And just put the image on top, Control Shift click, and maybe render the image out. Render the image out, see how it looks. So render image, and it's rendered. And you can see that you can't see anything, and it's gray. And there's a reason for that. So if we just zoom out right now, where is it? View, zoom out. That's because we haven't set any alpha value to the actual scene itself. And we can fix that by going over here, just search up film. and click transparent, and then render in image again. And you can see that now we've got the alpha values, and that's how it looks. So all you have to do is click render animations, and there you go, you got your cute doodle animations. That's it for today's tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.